kids, okay? Listen to me.
But you just said men and women cannot agree. My wife and I agree, and every woman on the show, so men and women can agree. You and I don't. Really glad to have our next. This is a return guest, actually, and it's very rare because people with whom we disagree often don't come back on the show, despite us trying to be as respectful, as civil as possible. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter. It matters not. So our next guest, very happy to have her back. I read some of her literature in college. I believe it was when I was in Munch. So I've known her for a long time. It's like I've been peering. She's been in a fishbowl, and I've been watching her for a long time back in the college days. So you can follow her on the Twitter at Naomi R. Wolf, and her website is dailyclout.io. Dailyclout.io. Ms. Wolf, thank you for being back.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad. I appreciate you coming back. And we were just talking before air, and you said that you got some positive feedback last time, even though we disagreed, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, no, it was really, really nice. I appreciate your audience, and I appreciated the conversation. There's so much polarized, kind of staged left versus right combat in this country, which is already divided enough. And your audience kept tweeting me saying, I didn't agree with a lot of what you said, but I appreciated the open dialogue you had with Stephen. So that was cool.
Well, yes, it is we've invited I hate to say a replacement because you were busy when we invited you, I think recently. And then we had Maria Del Russo invited back on. And then she said no. And actually, I think she even got more positive feedback at the end because it was her first time on air. So you never know. Sometimes people just don't like a disagreement. I've always tried to be straightforward about this. I don't care about civility as much as honesty, but I try to afford it to everybody. But truth is what matters most. This bill in California now that would force public colleges, I think, what is it, SB? I have it here somewhere. One moment. I don't know. There's a bill in California. I don't know the exact name, and people will fact check me on it. There's a bill that will force public colleges, universities to provide abortion pills up to 10 weeks afterward to women. Now, there's been a lot of controversy about this. We've covered this on the website. And you actually on your site, which I very much admired, had a pro-life feminist organization post an article. And I know you've talked about it in subsequent videos and podcasts.
Senate Bill 320.
Senate Bill 320. There we go. Yeah, I was going to get it wrong. It was 420, and then we're just going to get what? No, I have that wrong. And then you talked about it, even though you yourself are pro-choice, to use the term. What inspired you to do that?
So Daily Clout is a platform that gives everyone the ability to search bills, like the bill you just described, and find a whole set of bills by state or by subject, and then embed the actual live bill in social media. You can tweet this bill, for instance, to your networks in California if you want to support or oppose the bill, tweet the bill's sponsors. So it's a way for all of your audience, and I really encourage your audience to go to dailyclout.io and use BillCam to become lobbyists themselves. And the reason I wanted to showcase the president of Feminist for Life talking about this bill is A, we're nonpartisan, but B, she has very powerful things to say about why, in her view, this bill is not a feminist bill. And, we welcome anyone from any political background writing an op-ed about, bills that they can find in BillCam or bills at the federal level or the state level that they want to lobby around. Her position was that if we really supported women, we would create conditions where no woman would have to choose abortion. So I'm pro-life. I don't agree with the policy prescriptions that what did I just say? Oh my God, I'm technically pro-choice.
Okay, I was confused. My follow-up was about to entirely change. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I'm pro-choice, but that was an interesting slip. I really respect the position of Feminists for Life because they're unusual. They really are feminists, and that's why you can't reduce feminism to a simple set of positions. They really say all life is sacred. They oppose the death penalty. They oppose, euthanasia. They are absolutely in favor of everything that supports life and sustains life. So they're a very coherent critique of abortion. And, their view is, let's make it, if we really cherished women and children, women wouldn't have to choose abortion.
Yes. Well, I obviously, listen, shocker, I'm pro-life, so I don't want you to feel like you're being sandbagged. I disagree with their ideology there. I think there are a litany of reasons why I would, and particularly this bill. But I would like to, for people who don't know...
Are you pro-life or pro-choice?
No, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life.
Right. Right.
But I would love for you to express your views on abortion because I've heard you express them. I've seen you write about them, and you do. If I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure I understand it, and I'd like you to express it to the audience because I do have some questions. You do believe that it is the termination of a life, but you are pro-choice, but you want to reduce abortions, and you think it should be, if I'm not mistaken, less celebrated than it is by today's sort of progressive left. If I've gotten anything wrong, please let your views be represented by yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much. So, I mean, it's such a hard issue to talk about without being reductive. I did write an essay called, which I made kind of this argument. I said, and I wrote it after having been, been pregnant and had a baby. I'm still pro-choice, but after you are pregnant and have a baby and, you get to that 4-month period and the baby's like leaping about, there's literally no way that you can pretend there's not a being at stake, right? And so it was a very nuanced essay in which I basically said the language we're using in the pro-choice movement around this issue is the wrong language. It's very reductive. It's not just a clump of cells. It's not just a choice. It's a much more, many women experience it as a tragedy, or a loss. I'm not saying they have to, but just that is women's experience often. And I just thought that the discourse around the pro-choice movement was quite soulless. And yeah, you have to face the fact that it is the beginning of a life. You can't, if you're pregnant and you're at 6 weeks and the, obstetrician's like, oh, the baby's doing great, and
Right.
if you don't want the baby, suddenly it's a clump of cells. It can't be just dependent on
Can I ask
content.
a couple of questions because I find this very interesting. I don't agree with you, but I do find it interesting. A couple of things. It sounds to me like your position is much more that of classical feminism, which was abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. That was the term we heard. That was what we had heard repeated a lot. And now it's abortion on demand, taxpayer funded, period. And you actually see people with those signs. That is the platform of the DNC, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, maybe not yourself. You cannot find anyone in today's DNC who does not stand on that position, period. They would be considered an extremist. Whereas your view seems to be more in line with classical feminism. So when that's the position today, when that's the policy today, when in places like Colorado abortions occur up to 26 weeks, or when you see it seen as a travesty even in Texas up to 20 weeks, where they're like, well, hold on a second, this is a violation of women's choice. First question is, when faced with that, if we believe it's a life, what's wrong with being reductive? If it's a life, it is reductive in nature.
I didn't say it's a life.
Okay.
I said it's the beginning of what will be a life if it continues to, the pregnancy continues. Let me step back because what I really hate as a woman, and I'm just being honest, and I know you like it when people are honest, I really hate these moments where especially a man says, you have to choose, right? What's wrong with being reductive? And what
I'm asking a question. What's wrong with being reductive when faced with the idea of, listen, I believe it's a life. So that is, the argument is reductive. And that's not a negative thing. It's a life, in my opinion, and I'll defend it.
I'm trying to say is if we're ever as a country going to have really good policies around the issue of unwanted pregnancies, we have to be a little more patient. Because what women will say, if you really listen to them about this issue, takes a little longer and is more nuanced. Okay? So in my view, I really believe that categorically a woman needs to be able to control her own body, even if that can lead to a very tragic choice sometimes, right? She has to. I believe that in the first trimester, there should be no restrictions on a woman choosing abortion on demand, and that's the situation in Europe and in most civilized countries. And it is taxpayer funded. And also contraception is taxpayer funded. And you'd have half the number of unintended pregnancies if contraception was readily available, paid for by the government, as it is all over Europe in every sane society, right? 50%.
Well, we have gotten off the libertarian beam, so let's make sure we're clear on that. 'Cause I was assuming we were starting from the same premise. Now we're talking about taxpayer funded abortions, contraception. So
no, I'm talking, bear with me. I mean, the most humane and enlightened pro-lifers that I've spoken to also want contraception freely available. They see
Freely
like
available,
free
sure.
as much morally better than abortions, right? I mean, they do, and I have to agree with them.
Yeah,
I
freely
think
available,
whatever
of course. I would never restrict anyone's access to purchase contraception.
Okay, so whoever pays for it, I mean, I personally think if you're going to have roads and you're going to have schools, you should have free condoms and contraception. That is that would make so much of a better society and a better planet. But whatever,
Disagree.
leaving that aside, in Europe, after the first trimester, it's much more difficult to get an abortion. And so they don't have the
Right.
passionate emotional wars that we have here over second trimester abortions, right? But what they do have is a lot of support for the mother, a lot of options, a lot of government support if you are having a baby that you can't look after, that you can't afford.
Okay.
And so to me, that's a humane and libertarian solution, because you cannot have a society in which you, Stephen, tell me, Naomi, that I can't control what happens to my body, within a reasonable amount of time
Okay.
when I'm having a baby.
May I respond to that?
Sure,
Yeah.
please.
I don't think that you. Well, no, I just don't. I don't. You're very. You're more verbose than I am, and I want to make sure when I ask the questions that I can ask them clearly, so that we can get clear answers and counter answers. A couple of things. I don't think you can have a libertarian society where you, Naomi, force me to pay for your abortion or contraception.
That's a reasonable point.
On the issue of it being irritating when a man forces. I'm not forcing you to make a choice, an ideological choice here. My wife volunteers at a crisis pregnancy center 5 days a week. So,
Cool.
And I've done it as well. This is by a pro-life crisis pregnancy center. So we discussed the issue of choice. There are quite a few other choices. There are 5 choices. There's abstinence, there's contraception, and there's adoption, and there's motherhood. The only choice we're not okay with is that we believe to be ending a life. Well, of course, we're talking about in the case of the mother, because you mentioned it's frustrating when a man explains. So I'm talking about from a mother's perspective. I absolutely think that we should be encouraging young men to be fathers and stop being deadbeats. I think that every child would benefit tremendously from having both a positive role model of a mother and a father. On that, I'm sure we can agree.
Totally agree.
So the question comes back to then, at that point, we talk about nuance. It is reductive if you believe it's a life. So my question, I guess, then becomes, I appreciate that you want this to be more rare. I appreciate that you don't celebrate abortion as many people do today, and you understand that. But I don't think that it's intellectually as tenable a position as the radical left who believe taxpayer-funded on-demand, period, unless you really clearly define when is it a life. And that's the one thing that I don't understand. I don't necessarily, maybe I'm just not informed on your argument. When do you believe it constitutes a life?
Well, I guess I don't have a simple answer for you. I mean, Catholicism, with no disrespect to Catholicism, has really, made this an either-or conversation. I'm Jewish, and in the Jewish tradition, you have 40 days before it is a life, and that's true in Japan as well. There are a lot of cultures in which you have 40 days before that's considered even a fetus, and having been pregnant twice, I can say that in the first 40 days, whether it's nature, whether it's maternal instinct, I'm glad I never had to, but I could have terminated, what was happening in the first 40 days. And after that, I couldn't, and that's a very subjective answer. But I do absolutely believe that, the first trimester, especially, if women really were supported in finding out after they missed their first menstrual cycle that they were pregnant, then they could have, terminations in the first 6 weeks. And that is by far the least. I'm not saying it's a great thing,
Sure.
but it is not the same as killing a baby in my view as a mother. It's not.
Well, most women don't even notice necessarily that they're pregnant within the first 40 days. So
right.
There's a lot of women who know.
Had good health care for women, they would, a lot of women would find out and before the second menstrual cycle, so that's the first 6 weeks or 8 weeks.
Okay. So you believe we don't have health care that's high quality enough in the United States for people
Well, I think what I want to do, Stephen, yeah, obviously. So a lot of women don't find out because they're not seeing doctors. They can't afford doctors, and a lot of them are teenagers, or a lot of them are on, have drug issues, or, alcoholism issues, or are homeless, and they find out very late, or they,
Well,
get
I'm
help
talking
very
about the average woman, even an average healthy woman. I mean, again, listen, we can get into these extreme examples, but if we want to find common ground on the issue of abortion, I want to make sure that I'm clear. So, in your point of view, 40 days is the cutoff. Am I understanding this?
I mean, I'd like to live in a society, if I were making policy, right? But this is just me having traveled all over the world. I think a humane situation, and one that respects women's need to control their own bodies, their own reproduction, which categorically I believe in, is Europe's, where abortion really is, the morning after pill is readily available to women everywhere for free. It really is. And failing that, and condoms and free contraception are available to everyone all the time for free. This is not a little thing. I had my commentators on Daily Cloud who are in their 20s talk about a bill that would make them pay for condoms and contraception on college campuses. And a lot of even middle class and affluent kids really can't afford to have contracepted sex. It's really expensive, and so,
I'm sorry,
Europe.
I can't. This is maybe I respectfully can't go with you on that premise. You can get condoms for 25 cents at a truck stop, and you can get countless generic birth controls for under $14 at Walmart.
Really?
Yes, my wife works at a crisis pregnancy. There are so many options. This is why there was the outrage with Hobby Lobby. They were offering I think, 16 to 18 covered forms of contraception. They just didn't believe in the abortificancy. I don't believe that. I don't believe that if you're having sex in 2018 and you can't afford or know about contraception, that it's because of it's from a lack of trying, especially seeing women who come into these crisis pregnancy centers. Most of the time, it's just sexual irresponsibility. Statistically,
No, I respectfully, you would have liked my essay, because I really do believe that we all have to be responsible for using contraception, male and female.
Yeah.
But where feminism would be helpful to you right now is, I think you're not grappling with the fact that a lot of women can't get their partners to put on condoms. And no, I don't think you're right that women can find reliable contraception for $14, or it's $14, a week or every 2 weeks.
Let's round up to 50. Let's round up to 50 a month.
But why are we making it up? If we know that the pill can cost more than that, we know that
the pill can cost thousands of dollars depending on what you're using, and we know that the pill can be as low as $4 or $8 with generics. You can go to Walmart right now and get a generic birth control pill for $8, $12 if I'm being very, very generous.
You need a doctor to prescribe it for you, and a lot of women can't afford to see doctors. Look how many Americans don't have medical insurance.
Yeah, $50 cash. $50 to go see a cash doctor who can prescribe it, and very inexpensive. I just don't go along with that argument. People tend to be sexually, just like I don't go along with absolving people of responsibility. If you're with a guy who refuses to toss on a rubber, I believe that a woman should be responsible enough to not be with that guy. And I believe that guy is a germ. He should be responsible enough to put on a condom. She should be responsible enough to make sure she's not with a guy who refuses to put on a condom. But again, we're kind of getting off the track. Where I want to see where we find. That's okay.
Well, not getting off the track, though. See,
the issue is the issue of life. And my question is, which I find, because this is pivotal, and we can't find common ground under the guise of a lie. And that's the issue, too, where people say, well, let's find common ground with pro-lifers, but they don't listen to them saying, well, hold on a second. The only consistent line of logic is that of conception. Now, we're not against contraception, but the line of conception. So my question, for example, would be, why does it go from being, you said a woman's choice, it's her body, her choice. Well, the woman doesn't have 20 fingers and toes. The woman doesn't have 4 eyes. If the boy has a penis, the woman doesn't have a penis. This is a different body in her. This is not, she is not choosing. The point is, this is not her body. This is a separate body and a separate life. What, for you, logically, how do you argue it goes from day 39, not a life, to day 40, a life?
Men and women literally cannot understand each other around this.
Well, my wife agrees with me and every woman who works on this show. So let's go. Let's say you disagree with them.
Listen to me. I've had 2 kids, okay? Listen to me.
But you just said men and women cannot agree. My wife and I agree, and every woman on this. So men and women can agree. You and I don't.
But all right, I'm sorry. That was reductive.
Okay.
A fetus is both a separate being and part of your body. And you if you've never experienced it, you cannot understand that. It is not separate from your body. It isn't. And if it's not the right time for you to have a baby, and if you lived in a humane society where you could terminate that pregnancy before it's really a fetus, there are many, many circumstances in which that women have to be free to make that choice. It doesn't live in a spaceship. It doesn't live without, using the mother's body as its environment, as its host. This is something we have to grapple with.
Well, then why does day 40 matter at all?
Sorry?
Then this is why I say that I understand your middle ground is a more intellectually, I believe, untenable position than even the most radical feminist who believes until it comes out of the womb. If you use the argument that it is a part of your body, it is not a separate life, it is not a separate being.
It is also a separate life, and it's a part of your body. It's an and sentence.
Then what matters with day 40? This is the logic why is there a cutoff then?
Because I'm trying to be really honest with you. You're asking for a black and white answer from me, and I don't have one. What I'm saying is, in my 55 years on the planet, having had 2 children, having traveled all over the world, having seen many, many women's lives who were ruined, and babies' lives who were ruined by women not being able to control their reproduction. I've lost you, and
that's okay. No, yes, I can hear you. Don't stress. You can just hit the button to resend us video. It's this is what happens with phones in big cities. I blame big AT&T.
Sorry about that. And having thought deeply about this issue, we're not going to have an intellectually pure solution for any policies because there aren't any. But what we are going to have is humane policies that take into account women's and babies' needs. And in my view, a humane society makes contraception readily available, gives women access to abortion if they need it, and the morning after pill in the first trimester, and makes adoption really easy and supports all children. Makes sure there's food and education and clothing for all children, so that more women would not need to choose abortion. I'm with the pro-lifers on that, and I'm with the pro-choicers on women really needing to control their bodies, at least for the first trimester. Where I don't know how to get you back, but that's...
I just hit there's a little video icon, I believe. Hey, Jared, you can help her tell her where that is. A little video icon.
Little blue
video icon. I'm sure you can imagine where I would disagree with you, not as a man, but intellectually along the trail of there's nothing humane there we go. There's nothing humane if it's a life. And that's why I was so interested in your essay when you said it is
about societies where men control women's reproduction from the
No. See, you keep going back to the male wanting to control a woman. There are plenty of women, half who agree with this position that it is a life. Yeah. There is nothing humane about ending another life that is not your own. The only question that matters, and this is one that I think, Naomi, especially if you're talking about a platform where you want to bring people together, you have no chance of convincing someone who is pro-life, and certainly no chance of convincing the radical feminist left today if you cannot answer the question as to whether it is a life or not. And that's, again, where I posit the only consistent line of logic is conception. Otherwise, there's no difference at day 39, day 40, or exiting the womb. There's no difference.
So I'm glad you brought this up. I'm going to be a good daughter before Mother's Day. My mom is waiting for me to go join her. I'm out here visiting my parents, so I need to hop off. But okay. I will wrap up, or respond to what you just said. You are absolutely right that I cannot and will not give you a black and white answer on this. And that's because I have a sense of integrity. And from my lived experience as a woman and as a mother, as a woman, I cannot.
Come on, Naomi. This identity politics keep bringing as a woman, a sense of integrity. Okay, how about this? If you don't have an answer, right tonight, if you were driving home and you thought there were a dog on the road, but you weren't quite sure and you could slow down, you wouldn't kill the dog. It's not about you. It's about the dog at that point. If you don't have an answer, then you can err on the side of not ending a life. I think that's integrity.
The day after conception is a dog. I mean, I don't think these are apples and oranges. They're not the same thing. And I'm a very, I have a religious faith. I have reverence for all life. I do not believe they are the same. I think that as the being develops and matures, it becomes much more serious morally. And these are deep, deep issues. But it's because they're deep issues, I don't think they should be reduced to sound bites. I don't think they should be reduced to sound bites
either, but I don't think they should be reduced to policies. You just listed off, by the way, completely anti-libertarian, about 12 that I counted policies, which involved my direct subsidization of someone else's opinion, despite the fact that there's no answer there. So if we don't have an answer, the libertarian and both of us, common ground, would have to say, well, We can't spend money on somebody else's answer or opinion. And of course, we would have to err on the side of life if we don't have an answer.
Or err on the side of liberty and let women make that choice for themselves.
No, not if we're talking about a different body with different DNA, different fingers, toes, eyes, ears, central nervous system. That's a life. That's a very important argument.
Until it's born, it is in the woman's body.
Well, there you go. So up until the womb. But I know you have to go. Thank you so much, Naomi Wolf. It is.
But also, I just want to say the platform is for everybody. It's not about pro-life, pro-choice.
Yes. Let's get that website again one more time.
Sure, it's dailyclout.io. So come on, we'd love to have you as a guest on our platform.
100%. Thank you so much, Naomi. I appreciate it, and I will continue wrapping up here without you because I appreciate being good for Mother's Day.
Okay,
there we go. Thank you, Nake Jared. I would have liked to have Naomi a bit longer, and if you have. Actually, we'll have this in our book that changed my mind, going down a series of questioning. So this is not me fighting with windmills. I just don't feel that I had necessarily consistent answers there. There is a line of questioning that occurs when you say, well, okay, that's the woman's body. And she acted as though it was absurd, and feminists do this when you say, well, does a woman have, how many toes does a woman have? How many ears? How many hearts? How many kidneys? How many penises if it's a boy? You have to determine whether that is a life or not. And then again, it gets to the essence of what is a life? What determines a life? What is the essence of a human? Right? This gets to the Socratic method. Well, the essence of a human is what we're doing right now, is the ability to reason. No, animals are not questioning this right now. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, hold on a second. A zygote doesn't have the ability to reason, but it does have the potential to develop into a human being who would reason. Right? And all of those human zygotes, all of those clumps of human DNA cells, they never develop into apes. They never develop into dogs. They never develop into cats. They develop into human beings. So the ability to rationalize, the ability to reason is what makes us distinctly human. And the potential to, because a child who can't reason yet, who is 1 year old, is still a human, and we would not disagree there. That is what makes a human being. And what determines a life? Well, that's what determines a life. The fact that you have unique DNA, you have a unique genetic code that is formed the moment of conception, and you are ending that unique genetic code. And it's not your own. It is entirely separate from the mother's. So this is not a consistent line of logic. And one thing for me that I don't understand, and I really do appreciate Naomi Wolf's opinion, at least saying that it shouldn't be celebrated, that it shouldn't be abortion on demand, period. But if you really listen to it, at the end of it, her argument ended up sliding that way. Because the argument, again, the only intellectually consistent argument she can make is, well, it's in the womb, so it's a part of the mom. Okay, then it's you can't justify a cutoff at 40 days. There's certainly no biological argument. There's certainly no scientific argument. And there's no pragmatic argument. So if you get to it's the woman's body, listen, first off, first argument, you can't understand it as a man. That's a red herring. There are plenty of women who share this exact same opinion, okay? I understand that I have a penis right now sitting in this chair expressing this opinion, but I'm not the only one expressing it. Maybe we'll get a female sub-host at some point. Then if you get to the idea that is her body, her choice, it's not her body, it is another body. I've never heard a convincing argument that it is in fact a part of the mom's body and not a unique body. And then usually we go down the trail to viability. Well, it's about viability. Okay, well, viability is circumstantial. A baby today at Lenox Hill Hospital in Manhattan is viable many weeks. Then only 50 years ago in the hills of West Virginia. Then today in the hills of West Virginia. Let alone 200 years ago. Does that mean one's a life and the other one isn't? Why is one life more valuable? Still not a clump of cells. Still its own unique human being with its own genetic code. So is viability determined? Children, toddlers, they're not viable. What about older people who need to be fed, who need their diapers? They're not viable. Viability doesn't stand up to reason. And if there is no argument, this is where we deal a lot with the left and feminism, and I very much appreciate Naomi, and I would love to go on her podcast. I hope that invitation was genuine. I'll certainly take her up on it. Is not everything is nuanced. We use the term reductive as though it's bad. If you believe it's a life, as most people who are pro-life do, that's the argument. No other argument matters. And then, of course, we go on down the trail to something which is completely antithetical to libertarianism, which is the taxpayer funding of abortion, of contraception, predicated an idea which is patently false, that contraception is outside the realm of affordability, which statistically is not true, and that's also not why most abortions are performed, okay? So we're now so far off the beam, and we end up with, well, I don't really have the answers, so... And it wasn't, so I don't have the answer, so let's err on the side of liberty. Let's look at how is liberty defined there by the feminist left today. I don't have the answer, so let's err on the side of liberty. Well, do you mean liberty in everyone having the ability to determine their own life? No. I mean liberty in the sense that a woman has the right to terminate another life, and of course it has to be taxpayer funded. Or we hold a gun to your head and say, if you don't fund abortion and subsidize that, we're going to force you to subsidize contraception. I don't believe that the argument holds water. You can let me know if you think that it does. I wish we could have continued down this trail with Naomi Wolf. I didn't want to interrupt her. I didn't want her to get aggravated. I know a lot of the time she sees that as an aggressive male posture. But this is the same line of questioning that I would ask anyone who is, I mean, you can say pro-choice, pro-abortion, abortionists, people who believe that abortion is of more value than life. If you don't know, it seems to me reasonable to err on the side of life. And if you know, tell me how you know. Hey, if you like this video, subscribe or click the notification bell. You should do both anyways because YouTube doesn't notify you if you're just subscribed. You have to hit that notification bell. So if you already are subscribed, hit the notification bell. And if you're not supporting this content, go to louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub. You get the full nightly show, an hour, every day, free when you subscribe. This hand-etched girthy mug as well as other programming. And listen, you also get to support Not Gay Jared's Remicade treatment. I don't know what it is. I know it has something because he had ulcerative colitis. It doesn't anymore, thank God, because I removed his colon. And truth be told, it's not working very well anyway.